Welcome to the VARC Solutions webinar with Kinsey. You've got myself, Brad White, with VARC Solutions, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer as well as Chief People Officer. I do all the hiring and team leadership sort of stuff over here. And then we've also got Brandon Kinsey of Kinsey Management, who is just a wealth of knowledge and expertise when it comes to hiring and retaining top talent. So we've invited Brandon to join us. If you have questions during the webinar, on your GoToWebinar panel, there is a questions panel that you can expand out and basically put your question in. We will prompt Brandon throughout the webinar as those questions come in. But you can use that. You can also use the little raise hand icon that should be on your screen, your control panel as well, and that also lets us know that you have a question. But go ahead and use the question panel, and that way we can kind of queue those things up for Brandon. But we have got a lot of good information to share with you, and so just for a real quick sort of overview of what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about how to find the right people to hire, how to screen and evaluate those employees, talk a little bit about culture, how to define and ensure what a culture fit is, how to keep the keepers, and then ultimately how to maximize team performance through feedback, through continuous feedback. And so I'm going to turn it over to Brandon, and he's going to lead us on this journey for the next hour or so. But again, if you have questions, let us know, and we will address those as we go. Brandon, you can go ahead and start talking. I'm going to make you the presenter now so that you can share your screen.
I appreciate that, Brad.
Introduce yourself as well.
Thank you so much, Brad. It's an honor to be here. You know, anytime I get to network with you guys and just the network of partners, I'm always honored. It's a great group. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get my screen pulled up. Here we go. Screen one. Can everyone see the purple and black? How to hire and retain talent? We looking okay, Brad?
Yeah, looks good.
All right, wonderful. I'm going to kind of preface here. Again, we've been doing this for about 10 years. We've been in this space. Been very fortunate of how we got here. A little bit of real world Fortune 500 experience, and then some just good old fashioned, you know, figuring it out. Grew up in small businesses. Actually majored in psychometrics and human behavior. Really didn't think I was going to use it the way I did, but there was a different plan. So just really blessed, and I'm excited, and I get really enthusiastic talking about this stuff. So I'll warn you now, we're going to go through this pretty quick, but rest assured we're recording this, and I've built in a lot of practical tips and tricks that you could go back to my deck and use this, regardless if you work with me or maybe another consultant, that you can go back and use this as a framework. I want this to be like very valuable to everyone. So that being said, let's kind of get going on the deck. So a lot of times when we make hires, it feels like a gamble. All right, feel like we're at the casino and the deck is stacked against us. It's a dynamic situation where in this day and age, for as much information as at our hands, it's really hard sometimes to figure out who works, who will work and who won't. But kind of like the inspiration from Moneyball is we challenge the people that we talk to, our clients, our network of people, to think differently. We really want to objectify the process as much as possible. And sometimes when you have an old problem, if you keep tackling it the old way, you get the same old results. So we really want to get outside the box and stress that there's new ways of doing things that kind of give you, the business owner, an advantage. So this is kind of one of the first polls I have, Brad. If you want to kind of load it up for me, I wanted to know if any of you have any experience using a psychometric tool. This isn't going to be a big sales thing for what I do, but I am going to advocate that we know who we're hiring and a little bit about how they think, so that we can kind of predict behavior. So let's go ahead and let that poll run for a second, and I'll let Brad be my wingman on the when we bring that down.
Yep, we get almost 75% voted, so we'll give it another couple seconds and we'll show the results.
Excellent. Appreciate your participation. This will I've got 3 of these built in, so just be prepared. And I'll cue you which slides to take a picture of or to remember slide number, because I've
Okay,
got some good ones in here.
it looks like
All
we've
right,
got all the results in, so I'm going to share those on the screen.
awesome.
Can everybody see the results?
I'm going to trust they can. I'm not seeing them, but you can just tell me.
So basically, got 100% attendance on the voting, and 25% said that yes, they've used one of the
Okay.
psychometric tools, and 75% say no.
Okay,
So most
that's
people,
great. Because here's what I want to say to the 25%. This will seem relevant, and really one of the hardest things we have to do is to get people to trust these tools. This is exactly what they are. It's a hammer, it's a screwdriver, it's a a circular saw, whatever type of work you're doing. There's a specialized tool to help us do the work, and that's what psychometrics are. And there are validated tools that have been in the marketplace for a long time, that are scientific, that are legal to use. So for the 25%, you already kind of know this. The hardest part of my job is getting people to trust the tool. And if you've had a bad experience with them, sometimes, imagine taking a nail or a hammer and trying to use that to put a screw in the wall. It's not going to be real easy, right? Well, I needed a screwdriver or a screw gun. So if you apply the right tool for the right situation, we get a better outcome. So I want you to kind of frame this up as a backdrop. So as we kind of roll through the deck, here we go. I can't stress enough the fact that we have great science and we need to utilize it the best we can. When a person comes to work, the whole person comes. The briefcase is the fluid part of the person that changes over time. This is their knowledge and skills, their experiences. These are fluid, and we don't have a lot of control over these as the employer. At the end of the day, what we really want is we want them to be emotionally connected to the people in the workplace, to the work they're doing, to the organization's mission. That's really hard to get, though. That takes a lot of time, and that's sticky. But the thing that we have to react with really fast from really day one is what happens inside the head. And those are the behavioral drives, the needs, the things that make us react a certain way to stimulus, whether it be in the office or the things that we're bringing from outside the office. Those are the things that really make work dynamic. These traditional hiring and management decisions were all based off values. Today, we have a very big challenge in our workplace. We have 5 generations that are in the workplace right now, all of them bringing a different value system. Our values are changing rapidly. The evolution of the hardwiring of our brain is not. So the one thing that we can count on as a constant is what's going on in the head. It just so happens that that's why most people, that's why a lot of people have to be let go, because what's happening up here doesn't always translate to performance at the workplace. So here's where I want you to think different. We always tend to think in terms of people at work, but what we like to do is we like to start with the seat. You've probably heard this analogy, like you got to get the right people in the right seats on the bus. Notice that people always tend to come first. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's okay to think a little bit selfishly about your organization and think about that seat first. We really need to take more time to define, what does this organization need? What does my manager need? What do my clients need? What does the growth of my company in the next 3 years look like? That's all going to have a dramatic impact on this seat. So we really want to kind of think about that from a much different way. And everything that we do is about being objective, okay? One of the things that's so easy to do, and I love how we coined it, on some of the marketing that went out for today's session, is the halo effect. We have a feeling that, oh, the way I do this job, or the way we started it, it's the best way, and I need to find more people like me. And this is something that we do naturally. This is a tribal instinct that we have, but a lot of times in the workplace, it works against us in terms of what works good. So we want to try to objectify and eliminate this halo effect that, hey, I would be the most perfect employee for this job, right? So I got to go find a version of myself. So in order to do that, we've got to use some science that helps us be more objective. one of the first things that we do is we start applying objectivity to the job and the job role. This right here, I will not read to you, but I can guarantee if you're taking a look at it, it probably looks really boring and not very exciting. And that's because it's a job description. And that's what most of them are, quite frankly. They're not very exciting. They're pretty dry. They're really tactical. And we just do them because we got to check a box and we got to get something out on LinkedIn or Indeed. But what we want to do is we really want to get past the tactical pieces of the job description, and we want to be more persuasive. All right. If I really want to draw someone into the job and I really want to think about my seat, what does this person need to be like? What do my clients expect? What will align to our culture and who we are? What will the manager really relate to? What will enhance the relationships at work? And when we start doing this, we start using words that really are more emotionally connecting. So one of the first things we do when we really think about that seat, we want to define it using objective words and then put them in persuasive types of marketing. That's essentially what we're doing. You're selling your job to potential candidates. And AI, Chat GPT, a lot of HRIS software now has built-in AI where it will write things in a much more persuasive manner, like team-oriented, relationship-based, lifelong relationships. Someone like myself who loves meeting new people, I'm going to be drawn to this job. That sounds fun. All right. Someone who's maybe more analytical, heads down, a little more introverted, that doesn't sound as nice. I'm not going to be drawn to that position. And some of you may think, well, wow, I'm eliminating people. Well, that's kind of what we need to do because we need people to set in those seats that not only feel fulfilled personally, but are doing a great job for your companies. The other thing we like to do is and this is just an example of how we use Predictive Index to write these for us. It creates an objective job description through a survey. It writes them in a very emotionally inspiring way. You can cut and paste these in a job description. There's other tools that do this. Again, you could get real creative with Chat GPT and do a lot of the same thing. I think my message here is think about the seat first, really try to be persuasive and sell that seat to your candidates. Erica Seidel has some really great advice. She's one of the top recruiters in her field, in the IT field. And she likes to say this: you have to pierce the attention barrier of candidates. I know it seems like that they would be slowing down and really paying attention to the job. There's so many choices in the job market in so many fields. It's really hard to get candidate attention. So in order to do that, we really try to encourage our people to jazz up their job descriptions and make them almost like slicks or pieces of marketing material. And I know a lot of you are thinking right now, we don't have the time or money to hire someone to do these. I bet a lot of you are good at Canva. And if you're not, there's probably someone in your office that is. I would even tell you if it's someone under the age of 25, this is like super easy. My daughter is fantastic at these and she's like 14 years old. So this is something that the younger generation really has a strong point in, is using these types of things. And they can take very mundane collateral like that first description I showed you and jazz these things up. These really work well at piercing the attention barrier, making you look different than the competition. The other thing that I'm going to recommend is using employee referrals. You might think, well, how does this work? Well, imagine if you write a really great job description that's really describing your seat and why your seat is compelling, and you've got maybe a nice marketing slick. Take that to some of your current employees and ask them, do you know anybody who would be interested? Does this sound like the type of person, or they have these kind of behaviors? And if they do, why don't you give me a referral? This comes from a Deloitte study that says employee referrals are the single best way to go find new employees. All right, you want to work within the network of some of your best people to try this. Networking sites is next, and then internal candidates finishes third. And a lot of times that's overlooked. We think sometimes, wow, internal candidates may not work because I'm not big enough to have succession plan. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. I'm going to challenge the traditional thought on internal succession. So hold on to that 40%.
Hey,
The
Brandon.
next thing, yes, sir.
I was just going to jump in real quick to
Please.
because again, I've spent most of my career in a hiring role, and what you're saying is very, very true, especially about the employee referrals part that you just talked about. Because if an employee is willing to put their neck on the line to recommend somebody to you, they have to trust them. They have to have a pretty high level of confidence that they're going to be a good fit and be able to do the job. I mean, nobody wants to say, "Hey, here's my buddy. Here's my best friend. We went to college together. He's great," and then gets in and flubs it up and doesn't do very good. So I think you do get better to candidates, and in our company for sure. Some of our best employees are people that were referred to us either by a fellow employee or one of our clients even sometimes.
Brad, I think that's a great point. I mean, think about it. If they're a great employee, there's a good chance you're doing a lot of things right with them. You're managing them right. You've got emotional connection. They're getting the continuous feedback and performance management that they probably crave and desire. The last thing they want to do is to refer someone back who's gonna mess that up. I'll say this a little bit later in the presentation, but employees don't leave jobs; they leave people. Okay, so when they get a chance to refer someone into that network, they usually do it very carefully. I couldn't agree more. It's probably one of the best things you can do internally. As far as what you need to do when you're thinking about this seat, we like to get stakeholder alignment. What does that mean? So stakeholders, people that would be knowledgeable about your jobs. Maybe that's a hiring manager, another team member, maybe a co-owner, any other senior leader. But one of the things that I think is often overlooked is the person who's actually in that role. This is something Brad and I have talked a lot about, is that when you have a role model, sometimes I call, you hear them called high performers or, benchmarks or whatever the case may be. But if I have a person that is really good in a role and I need to replicate that role in another location, or my workload has grown and I'm thinking of a couple names right now. At VARC, some people who I love working with. And if I had to find another one of the first things that I would do is I would say, I want to know what their behavioral skills look like. And I want to see other people who have those same characteristics. I've had people tell me before, wow, that sounds a little biased right there. No, it actually doesn't, because I can tell you that behavioral characteristics go across every continent on this globe and every culture. One of the things that I've been fortunate to be a part of is work for some really big companies. And when we put on manager trainings and we bring in people from every corner of the planet, every native language, every culture, everything that society tells us that makes us different, that divides us, and you give them a psychometric and you look at their management, their behavior style, how they communicate, how they assess risk, how they make decisions, all of these things that I can draw out of a psychometric, I'm going to tell you what's a fact. We are all wired exactly the same. We just look different. We're different books, but our makeup is very, very similar on how our brains are wired. We just have to get past some of this. So we believe that this is one of the most objective things that we can do, because if I find a great role model, I open the world of hiring to a massive book of different types of people from different walks of life with different backgrounds, but have the same behavioral skill set that made this other person possible for success. And I'm gonna hit on that. So this is a big theme of what I'm going for. Once we set this target, we like to do a gap analysis. It's just, I'm sorry, I kind of blew through that one. What I like to do is, this is just how we define the role. The bottom line is define the seat. And then once we start looking at candidates, we got to start having some discussions about what is the gaps or a gap analysis between that person and the role. It's really, really critical to think about how they are going to behave in my workplace. How is this candidate going to behave under this manager, on this team of people, under our culture, maybe under the stress of your clientele? During busy season, let's say it's tax season and you're working those numbers, how are they going to react under those stimulus? That's where we've really got to take some critical and necessary looks about performance. So I transition now into the screening process. So now we're talking people. I'm put a person, which is those letters, up against my target and I'm starting to make analysis. I'm determining where there's fit and where there's gaps. One thing I will tell you, we do not believe in red light, green light. What I mean by is this is a tool, okay? A hammer can get me a long way, but it can't do everything. So what we stress to our clients is we want to define the seat, assess the person, analyze the fits, okay? And we're looking for an objective measures there to do that. When we do it from gut instinct and experience, that's subjectivity. The reason why we like psychometrics, it adds a layer of objectivity to the process. Remember, I would tell people if you were working with me, we're not the cake, we're just a layer in the cake. All right, we want to make your process more objective and give you more information. And anybody you work with or any psychometric you use, I would urge you to look at it from that perspective. The other thing we've got to get better at doing, and this isn't just this happens in big companies, small companies, and all sizes, is structured interviews. Structured interviews are when we have standardized questions, we've got standard ratings, standard training so that everyone's doing it the same way in a process that we can repeat that's legal. Unstructured is very random. We're talking about our favorite sports teams. There's really not a set, thought process to, hey, what does our job look like? They tend to be very informal. Even myself, I have to be careful of this. I'm an informal communicator. I want to make friends with everybody, but in this job process, we have to maintain a level of decorum because it's a job and it's serious. And we can't just shoot questions from the hip. That's a good way to get yourself in trouble. And I think we'd all agree that we need to be sensitive to a lot of topics today in our society. So structured interviews are 2 times more reliable for predictive job success. Brad, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in too, and we do have a couple questions in the chat, so I'm gonna prompt those as well.
Yeah, let's shoot them. Let's do them.
But like one of the questions that I had for you on this structured interview stuff is, kind of the question is like, why is it so important? And really, I want to give some context to that in terms of small businesses. If you're Hewlett Packard, if you're Southwest Airlines, if you're a massive company, you've got HR department, you've got people that are certified HR management professionals that probably have spent hours and hours and hours trained on how to do hiring and how to interview and all that other stuff. But a typical small business, you're the owner, you're doing it. Maybe maybe you've got an office manager and that person's doing it. And so I don't think there's necessarily that same level of like professional HR hiring person that would know how to do it right. So just kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. First of all, you can go online and find some really great resources on some standardized hiring practices. SHRM, is a really great resource. They've got a great search function. You can type in there, hiring process, standardized questions, things like this. And it really will give you a how-to on not just legality, but just some really simple, easy things to do to structure your process. I think it boils down to a couple of really easy things. I think, and I have some of these in my tips in the end, but you got to kind of start with your seat. All right. Got to understand that. Then, you're going to start taking in resumes and candidates. I think it always starts with a phone screen. We like a psychometric because it helps us screen to get best fit. And we pare that down to maybe our top 10, our top 5, whatever works for you. It depends on the number of candidates you bring in. Sometimes it may be the top couple, but I also want to make sure that I'm making the best use of my time. We screen those candidates with really a short 5-minute conversation, and it's really simple things like, basically asking them a little bit about, it's really a validation of the resume is what it really is. Is this address still good? Obviously this phone number is good. Do I have this email? Can you tell me a little bit about your current work situation and just things like that? I'm validating what I'm seeing on the resume. And that's a time when I really want to get a feel for that person's interpersonal skill. That's where I can schedule them. Once we get them in, I think paneling is better. If you can have a team member, 2 or 3 people in the interview, it's better. And you take turns asking questions. And then when that candidate leaves, you have the debrief immediately. That way you take those notes so that maybe you misunderstood one of the answers, and your counterpart might say, no, what I think they were meaning by that answer was this. And so we kind of work through some of the biases that are built into ourselves that we just have. And we really want to shoot for some objectivity and perspective. And so those right there are some really easy tips to just objectify your process that you can do any level, any size. We're a small company ourselves. That's literally how we go through the process.
Great. And by the way, the panel interview stuff is fantastic too, because, I'm not always picking up the same thing that the person's picking up next to me. I have, what it goes beyond male, female, like what do I focus and think about and pay attention to versus somebody else. But when you've got 2 or 3 people, they're all noticing and thinking about different things. And I think, we've saved ourselves from some potentially really bad hires when somebody said, did you notice this, this, and this? And I'm like, no, I had no idea. So
Right.
really good stuff. So some of the questions that were asked, I want to go ahead and tee those up for you. What are some of the names of the psychometric tools in the marketplace that you recommend?
Well, obviously I've got to plug what we do. We're Predictive Index partners and have been for right at or almost 10 years. Just to be completely candid, it's been around since the 50s. It was built by the Air Force to be a hiring metric. That was its intended use. It's grown in its capability over time, but we decided to become partners because of its reliability and dependability. It has a little different pricing model than most. A competitor who also has track record is Culture Index, totally different company, but also has a track record of hiring. There's more robust, deeper psychometrics that they may take 45 minutes to an hour, but things like one that comes to the top of my mind is the Thomas. Very good assessment. It's long, it's intensive, but for some people who really love psychometrics, it's a good one. HireVue is another one that comes to mind. It's newer, doesn't maybe have as much of the science backing and longevity as something like a PI, but does a good job too. And I've got a list of these, Brad, that I could share. If y'all want to give Brad your information, I'm happy to give you a screenshot of some names and I've got a cool graphic that actually says like what all these psychometrics are for. Like some are for hiring, some for engagement, some for leadership development. Like one I always get is DISC. Oh, we use the DISC for hire. The DISC is great. The DISC is a developmental tool. It's more for leader development, manager development. It tells you on Wiley's website that it's not validated as a measured form of hiring. And so to me, if I was an employer, I would be nervous about that. I don't want to use a psychometric that hasn't been validated as a hiring tool. So these are just some things that are really hard to know. It's my world, so of course I know it, but I'm happy to share the graphic. That way y'all can get some names and find things that work for you. I think it will objectify your process.
Yeah, absolutely. We can share some of those after the webinar as well.
I'll be happy to.
The other question we had was how does that whole gap analysis work that you were talking about?
Well, I gave you a really specific one to how we do it. Like when we set an objective, like target for what our seat looks like, the behaviors that we feel like are going to work for one of my clients for their job function. What we do is then it gives me that those orange ranges that I showed you on my screen, and then we overlay it to the person's psychometric or their PI, and we can read the gaps analysis between that. Most of the tools do it similar. I will tell you that some of the tools they're very good tools, but they rely on a practitioner, someone like myself, to kind of read the tea leaves, if you will. They're not as easy to read into because they're psychometrics, and some of them can get pretty deep in the science. Other tools like Culture Index, PI, even HireVue, you can kind of see it. They're visual. And this is a gap analysis up on my screen right now. This is an interview guide where it helps you ask some behavior-based interview questions to validate some of the behavior that you watch and see in an interview. I'm happy to pass a sheet on to Brad that gives you a list of behavior-based questions that you're free to ask in a job interview. And so if you combine that with some of the questions you're already asking, the thought process here is we want to catch someone in the moment where they have to talk about an experience where behavior has guided their action. That's really hard for the human brain to make up. You know, there's some verbal cues you can pick up on, up and to the left, and the long pauses and looks up, like we're trying to create something in our mind as opposed to telling you something that really happened. So these are just some things that I can give over to Brad, and happy to share afterwards, but I hope that answers the question. We could spend an hour on that by itself. When we're making a hire, here's three big ones. And this really, I wanted to leave you with a couple of don'ts and a big do. Don't hire off the resume alone. Okay, use a psychometric. That's really, really important. I think it objectifies the process, and it helps you get into the most stable thing that you have as an employer at your disposal, which is someone's hardwiring of their behavior and their cognition. We like cognition. I don't care about IQ. In fact, science says it's not a good indicator of job performance, but how fast someone learns, their learning agility is. And so how they think, how they behave, what they need, and how fast they learn, very, very important. So don't hire off the resume alone. Don't hire off the psychometric alone either. Anybody who tells you, oh, once you use our tool, you don't even need to worry about the resume anymore, I would be very leery of. We don't coach it that way. We like a holistic approach. We need to look at the resume, use the traditional, validate the background, do the screenings, check the references, make sure that you can't find any holes in work experience and things that can't be explained properly. Any type of legal terminations and backgrounds. Remember, you have a right to go and look into all these things, but don't use the psychometric by itself either. It's a tool. All right, you can't just build a house with a hammer. It takes more than one thing. So really, really think about that. And when push comes to shove, hire the person, not the skill. Okay, there is a growing thought process in the job market that if you can teach someone how to do something, as long as they have the behavior and the cognition to carry that out. I don't know if you are familiar with Sam Adams Beer Company, but the leader there has, for the last 30 years, they threw out all job requirements. They use resume to learn who a person is and to background check them, okay, for integrity. They use a psychometric to see how they think and how they respond, and they find places in that organization, and they have a robust training program. Now, some of you are going, we can't afford training. I understand that. That's why we find entry-level positions are really, really critical. If I can teach someone how to do a little bit of something, and as I start to see them grow, internal candidates become very good places for me to grow our homegrown talent. All right, so we believe very strongly in looking at someone's soft skills and how fast they learn, and then training them little bit by little bit for internal promotion. That's something that might be able to really help you down the road. A couple of other things you can do to help sell yourself. Talk about who will lead me. Don't be afraid to talk about who you are as a leader. Use your own psychometric. Tell them who you are, maybe who the manager is. You know, hey, how are you going to interact with this manager? That's especially for younger generation, millennials, and even you know, Gen Z that are entering the job market. Being able to paint a picture of a vision of what working for you looks like, those are very big risk, you're de-risking for those job seekers. So talk a little bit about what leadership looks like at your company. Talk about the team members, sell your team. Talk about the career path. The longer you work for us, this is what it could look like working here. And sell your core values. I'm going to hit this one hard in just a second, but whatever you're about, whatever you stand for, whatever your why is, don't be afraid to push that. We think marketing core values does a couple of things. Number one, it means you stand for something, and everyone wants to be a part of something special. I know that's from a movie, but it's true. Psychologically, we all want to be a part of a pack. And so when we sell that and we push that, we're basically saying we are different than the competition because we stand for something. If you work with a recruiter, I'm not going to read this to you, but sometimes it may happen. This is some do's and don'ts. You need to really think about, you know, making sure you're giving the recruiter feedback, put your best and first offer out first. Every candidate complains about getting lowballed off the start. You put your best and final from the beginning, and if it's not enough and it doesn't work, that's fine. The back and forth is a big turnoff, and the last thing you need in a Glassdoor society is have people going online talking about how you lowball them. So make sure that you do that well when you work with a recruiter. And if there's not a counter, just let them know up front that it's not going to work out. Communication is critical, and so I really recommend that when you work with a recruiter, or even if you're doing the recruiting yourself, that these would really apply. These will be in the slide deck for you to look over. This is the part that I really want to get to, and I want to focus the rest of our time as we get through this poll question, Brad. I'm going to ask you something. How many of you have a mission statement that tells why your company exists? I'm going to tell you right now, there's 4 people in my company. We have a mission statement. We talk about it every single week. It's on my wall outside my office. It's on every communication we send out internally. So that being said, it's important. I want to know how many of you have a mission statement that says why you exist.
Of course, Brandon, another great question would be, do you know what your mission is?
No, exactly.
Do you know what it is? Do you recall what it is?
Brad, that's so true. In fact, I would say prior to 2020, prior to COVID year, I bet not only did we not talk about our mission, I bet even Lisa and I, the 2 co-founders, we would have given you 2 different statements on what our mission was, but I'm going to explain to you why it's important.
Yeah, still waiting on a couple more people to vote, but I can mirror all this stuff, Brandon, because I mean it's just like you've lived it, I've lived it. I'm sure a lot of the folks that are on the webinar today have lived this as well. But I think we as leaders, we sometimes make the mistake of thinking that everybody in our organization understands the mission because we told them that once,
Yep.
or during an interview or during onboarding, we said, here's our mission. But if it's not discussed, if it's not brought up, if it's not lived, every single day after that, it's easy to make, ask the question like, why don't people seem to get the mission? Because it's the last time you brought it up was 4 years ago, right? So I'm going to go ahead and show the results here.
Yeah.
And basically 83% said that yes, their mission does tell why their company exists. 17% no.
Okay, excellent. Well, you're on the right track because I'm going to advocate that your culture is tied directly to your mission, or it needs to be. The alignment between what you want your company to be is really set forth by your mission statement. And so when we talk about great hiring, great retention, great performance management, companies that people want to be a part of any size, both small and large, we believe it starts with why. I know Simon Sinek said it first. He wasn't wrong. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But the culture is everything you do. It's how you get things done, how decisions are made, your values, your ideals, beliefs that are shared. When it's strong and intentional and well communicated, it definitely drives business forward. It makes you more resilient. We believe strongly in having good, strong mission statements. And so even if you have one, I'm going to challenge you to really take a hard look and make sure that it's up to date and that you're using it. The bottom line is every single person in your company needs a true north. They need to know what you're about when they're onboarding and brand new, or whether they've been there for 10 years. This helps anchor them emotionally to the job so that when times are tough and the economy's bad, or you're during your busy season, or there's a pandemic, whatever the situation, they know and can predict how things are going to go at your company. And so we feel like the mission is the most basic premise there. My time as an educator and having a degree in human psychology and how people learn, you've got to tell someone a minimum of 17 times before they'll probably internalize and remember something. So those mission statements have got to be on the wall. They've got to be talked about. They've got to be brought up. You've got to get creative to be able to get those things to stick. The vision is what happens when you've achieved the mission long enough. So mission and vision are very important. And then the strategic intent, how will you get there? How will you make the mission possible? For Kinsey Management, our mission is to bring our leaders objective people data to help them make better people-centric decisions. What does a long-term vision look like? Our vision is I would be a trusted advisor for a long period of time. I want that extended relationship. All right. My business depends on it, probably like a lot of yours, on repeat clients. So in order for me to do that, how am I going to get there? Well, I've got to have a high level of engagement. I've got to keep them on the forefront of information about the predictive index. I've got to keep them up to date on how the industry is changing. And I want to make sure that they understand that this doesn't have to be hard to do and that we can help them augment whatever challenges they're facing on the people side. So that's mission, vision, and strategic intent for us. So internally at your company, you can probably see this really bright star here. For leaders, or at least maybe the co-founder or the people who came up with that mission statement, this is what your mission looks like. It's bright. You know exactly what it is and you could repeat it. For your managers, they probably know what it is. The star starts to get dim and fade, but at least they know which direction to head if they need to, you hope. But if it hasn't been communicated well, this is what your mission looks like to the people who work for you. They're not really quite sure which star to focus on. So if you lack a mission, or if your mission is outdated, or it hasn't changed as your business has evolved, this is what the sky looks like to even candidates who are looking at your company. There's no bright shining star for them to lead and follow and to be a part of. So starting with why shows that you universally care about your employees. And I had a bank tell me one time, well, our goal is to be $1 billion bank. And I told the guy, I said, I love it, but it's not going to get the bank teller who's a single mom with a sick kid out of bed that day to get her to drive in 45 minutes to your job. It's not going to bring her to work. There's got to be more to this bank than being $1 billion bank. And at the end of the day, that's what I want you all to think about. Your mission statement should be something that people can believe in and create a shared experience. I know you're probably thinking, hey, we can't save every single tree, and and I get sometimes that we get cynical about mission statements because sometimes they're just there for show. Well, that's why I'm urging you to do things a little bit different. If we do a good job of explaining why, and we explain what that looks like over time, I'm going to kind of skip this one because this is more about crafting the mission. Here's what I want to show you. If we'll really dedicate to good mission statements, what we essentially do is we create, I wish we would have had time to do this, but I've done this many, many times when I talk about culture. And these are all the words that come up. But the number one thing that everyone says, it's about a shared belief. It's my belief, it's our systems, it's our values, it's the things that we assume. And the best way that I can show it is in the iceberg. And I bet you've seen this thing, but you hadn't seen it like this because we made this. But if I looked at culture like an iceberg, look at the things above the water that we say, okay? Vision, mission, goals, procedures. Oh yeah, this is what we say. But we also know that there are things that the way we really do it to get done. These are shared perceptions, values, unwritten rules, unwritten stories. Oh, did you hear about so-and-so? These are things that really bring culture together. That's the invisible part. We've got to bring new employees into this when we hire them. So we can't just say what we're going to do and then do something completely different. If we say it and then our mission, we really have to be about it. And then we have to have a plan to bring them into those things that really happen behind closed doors, those beliefs and perceptions and values. So the more that our whys can be real and true, and we stay dedicated to the vision, and it guides all decisions like a North Star moving forward, then I give something for people to believe in. Here's the best way I know how to explain it. Hey, I'm getting excited now because this is probably one of my favorite parts of the day. Even if you're a small company, I guarantee there's something you want to achieve this year. Maybe this year, next year, your 3-year plan, you've got goals, you've got results, okay? Those results are going to generate actions. These are the things that we have to do to get results, okay? Those actions come from beliefs. Here's where I'm tying this together now. Beliefs will drive action. What I believe in will dictate what I do. but that belief is driven by my experiences. Whatever I've experienced in my present and my past will it will form my belief system, which creates my actions. So when I'm giving that employee, hey, we need to get this done for this, remember, they're going through this whole process. Well, I've experienced this before. I believe this, so it's going to determine how my actions are. So in a company, my mission and vision is essentially about my results. I'm telling them this is our finish line. The culture that you build around that is really the set of experience and beliefs and actions that you tell them they're important. That's when we bring them into our organization, having stuff like VART does, like VIPP, and having the things where we wear the heavy metal t-shirts on Friday, or whatever works for your company. Those are shared experiences. Your North Star and what you're about as a leader guides their beliefs. So when you essentially pay them to make decisions, so imagine, and I'm using examples, one of our salespeople, when they're out in the field and they're having to make a split-second decision to promise something to a prospective client, that's an action. And if I haven't tied that back to an experience that says, hey, this is what we're about, this is our value, and remember what we've gone through together, then I will never be able to achieve that mission and vision. So tying together this piece about culture is really, really important. It's the experiences.
I want to jump in just real quick. I wanted to just kind of do a time check. Also, if anybody has questions as we're kind of going through this, again, even if we don't have time to get to all your questions during the webinar, if you put them in the chat, we'll know that you asked the question and we can follow up afterwards. Brandon, we got about 8 or 9 more minutes before we wrap up. But I wanted to also just kind of make a suggestion to the folks that are on the call. And again, this is again partly from my experience, which Taylor led to my beliefs and actions. But I think doing this wrong and quickly is really easy, right? I mean, again, we're not sitting here thinking about this stuff every single day. We've got businesses we're trying to run, and so I think anybody can just go try to do this, and you can probably do a job, and it may be good, it may not be so good. Doing it poorly, though, is very easy to do. And so I want to just encourage people to reach out to Brandon and really just seek Kinsey's advice. They've been doing this a lot. They've done this for a lot of different clients. They know the pitfalls of writing a poorly designed mission statement, that doesn't, like Brandon, like you were saying, that might be factually true, but doesn't tug at anybody's heartstrings and really connect with them emotionally. So I just want to encourage people to reach out to Brandon and really leverage their expertise on any of this stuff that you've seen and heard so far. We'll have the slide up at the very end that has the contact information, but you can also reach out to us and we can make sure that we'll connect you. So anyways, got about 7 more minutes left, Brandon. Just want to give you that time check.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bump a couple of these, and then I'm going to go to my takeaway slides, and we can take some questions. So this is a big ask, but I do want to touch on a little bit of the keep the keepers part. The reason why we want to get everybody moving in the same direction is because when we do that, we get the result we want. I think that goes without saying. Take a picture of this one. It'll be in the deck, but if you want probably maybe the most important slide in here when it comes to culture, this one's it. These are the 6 critical questions every business owner needs to ask themselves about their company. Why do we exist? How do we behave? What do we do? How will we succeed? What's the most important thing right now, and who has to do what? You've got to ask those questions, and you got to know those 6 at any given time. If you can answer those 6, you can create a great mission, vision, and strategic intent, and then begin to align a hiring practice back to it. So keeping the keepers. We'll skip this, Brad, for time.
Okay.
So just think about this. For me, managing people one-to-one is so easy. I love it. It's the part of the job that I get the most enjoyment out of. But I'll also be honest with you. For every one of me, there's probably 2 that don't enjoy it. Okay. The people part of it runs their battery down, both emotionally from a time perspective, but also just from a day-to-day. With that being said, I wish I could tell you some good news that it didn't matter, but employees say there's 3 things that they feel like really impact their one-to-one with their boss. Ineffective performance management. I'm not getting enough feedback. 2, I'm disengaged. I'm not connected emotionally to this work, and inefficient meetings. I meet to meet and it was pointless. So 79% of managers, and I would throw small business leaders in there too, because you're having to manage and run the company, but burnout is a real thing, okay? And I think in small business where we wear a lot of hats, it's even worse. I bet it's higher than 79%. There's probably a few of you even debated if you wanted to get up and come to work this morning. Believe me, I've had those days myself. But business relies on the one-to-one, okay? There's no way around it. So fixing engagement, keeping the keepers, you got to know what motivates them. And that ties back to the psychometric. When I have a good why, I know what motivates people. I can make a better people decision on the hire, and I can begin to motivate them on the back end. And when you align everything that I've talked to you today about, the job, the manager, the team, and your culture, study says that when I do that, and I'm going to just kind of skip through here real quick, basically, you're 42% less likely to lose people. So already you've already cut it in half. Being remote friendly, having some benefits, promoting inclusivity, and then practicing talent optimization, which is everything I told you today. You already are at 50% or better of holding on to the keepers. And so this is some stuff that really just you need some thought, especially this one. It's not for everybody, but if you can do it, there's some opportunity there. And I think Brad's a great resource to talk about remote as well. This is really just stressing the importance of the one-to-one. Here's what I stress everyone do. Take a picture of this slide as I wrap up. You need a psychometric. For us, it's PI. You need an employee engagement survey. You need to be doing annual review. You need to be doing regular check-ins, minimum quarterly, all right? And if people leave, do an exit interview. Find out why they left. If you do those things right there, you're doing better than about 62% of companies in the workplace, and that's of all sizes. Most of them do not do all of these things, all right? So you'll be in rare air if you are taking account of these, and you're going to be better at keeping the keepers because you're going to have a pulse on what your people need. Use some science. I think it's important. I think I've made that point today. Those tools are really, really important. It matters now because losing people is a real cost to you. There's a virtual effectiveness in the workplace that younger generations want. You need to know how to manage it. If you have an employee that's disengaged, it's still costing you, and burnout is a real thing. So the platinum rule is try to find a way to treat people the way they need to be treated. And I think that's what a psychometric does. It helps you understand that person so that you're a better leader to them. Remember, if you lead them the way you want to be led, that's the golden rule. And that only helps with little old ladies across the street. It doesn't necessarily apply to the workplace and business. What I'll leave you with, and I won't read this to you, this is the top 10. So if you want to come back to this deck and say, hey, Brandon, I need this, but I don't know where to start with these top 10 bullets and work your way through them. And when you hit one that you get stumped on, I'm happy to help you. And I would even say Brad is a good resource on a lot of these too. He's a professional and he's great at what he does. There's my contact info. This is a big topic, and I think you can see that I'm passionate about it. But I'm going to leave you some good collateral as a gift for being here with me today. We got a few minutes. Is there any questions, Brad?
Yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the question panel, and I'm going to pull up my slide deck on my screen.
Quick. You mean to unshare? There we go.
Yeah, perfect. And just do a real quick wrap up too. So yeah, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat before you leave, or question before we leave. Brandon and I will stick around for a few minutes after the webinar is over if you do have any questions. Also on the slide, so I've got Kinsey's overview. They're based out of Texas, but they work with clients nationwide. Just fantastic at the employee assessment, the optimization, the business strategy, sales team training, leadership development training. Very, very good, very, very good experts at what they do. But more importantly, and Brandon, I know you're going to appreciate this, good people to work with. Okay, just having good people that you can have a conversation with and just say, hey, look, this is the problem we're having in our company and with our team and with our leaders, and how do we solve these problems? Brandon and Lisa, they're just amazing at what they do. So feel free to reach out to them. Our company, just sort of in conclusion, VARC Solutions, we are your one-stop shop when it comes to all things QuickBooks, bookkeeping, cleanups, training, migrations, we do it all. And so let us know if we can help you with your QuickBooks or really just any other software you need connected to your QuickBooks to solve business problems. We'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we will see you at a future webinar. Thanks, Brandon, for coming and sharing your expertise. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks everyone. Pleasure being here.